Good afternoon, everyone. So it's my absolute honor to introduce to you Kendall Worth. So Kendall Worth has lived in Halifax since 2003, and he has become a well-known anti-poverty advocate and activist. His advocacy work began with selling and sometimes writing for Street Feet, a newspaper by and about people living in poverty. Kendall worked with the Street Feet until 2013, when it was closed. After this became involved with the Halifax Media Co-op, learned about journalism there, and was a frequent writer and contributor to the Nova Scotia Advocate up until the recent passing of its editor, Robert Devet. Over the years, Kendall has come to know the community of people who have no choice in life but to rely on income assistance as their main source of income. He has learned about how it hurts their mental and physical health. He has learned over the years that the principal reason that poverty hurts people's mental and physical health is because income assistance rates do not provide enough money to live on. Kendall says, "I believe in advocating to make things better for income assistance recipients. Basic income would solve a lot of problems that people I advocate for experience in life." And there's some more information here that we can look at through the Halifax Media Co-op. So, without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Kendall Worth to the podium. Thank you.
All right. I want to start off my speech by thanking the organizers of this event for asking me and allowing me to speak here today. Whereas I am a poverty advocate / activist here in Halifax, I truly believe that my speech is important because as a journalist who has covered poverty and poverty-related issues here in Halifax, I believe every opportunity to raise awareness is important in the path of achieving the creation of solutions to end and solve poverty. I do all the advocating I do because I am a strong believer in the fact that poverty and the unfair consequences of people living in poverty are forced to live with can be resolved if the right tools and support were in place for these people. With today's conference being a basic income conference, basic income is a strong tool in the box to resolving poverty. During this recent time of COVID lockdowns, the federal government offered CERB for a period of time during COVID lockdowns. CERB was $2,000 a month, and for people who qualified for CERB, that $2,000 a month was a great livable income, and receiving that amount made a difference for those who were receiving it. But the reality is not every Canadian who needed it qualified to be receiving that $2,000 a month. Say if every Nova Scotian who currently receives income assistance at $950 a month, being our current enhanced standard household rate for income assistance here in Nova Scotia, was receiving that same $2,000 a month offered through the temporary CERB, it would improve the day-to-day living situation in a multitude of ways. It would give them better ability to live in safe housing and make housing more affordable. For persons with physical disabilities, it would give them better ability to live in accessible housing. It would reduce the amount of social isolation that these people have no choice but to live day-to-day life with. I'll explain more on why as this speech goes on. It would give them better ability to improve and maintain their health and well-being. An example of this one includes, but is not limited to, giving them the ability to afford fitness centers, gyms, indoor pools, and better ability to eat healthy. What I just listed above are just the basic examples of having $2,000 a month would improve things. I should note that $950 a month has been the enhanced income assistance rate in Nova Scotia only since June 2021. Before that, income assistance recipients were only receiving $850 a month, and I should note, whether receiving the past $850 a month or receiving the current $950 a month, some, if not many, income assistance recipients were, and at least still receiving the extra allowances for special needs. However, here in Nova Scotia, there are systematic problems and bureaucratic nonsense involved with qualifying for those special needs allowances. The $100 increase in the income assistance rates is only a drop in the bucket toward what is really needed for people to live on. And $950 a month is not enough to live on. In many cases, the actual amounts allowed within special needs allowances I do speak of do not always cover the cost of special needs. The existence of a basic income can fix all the problems that I mentioned above and do so much more for people. Throughout my whole life, right from when I was a kid, I was always a believer in the fact that everything we do in life is a learning experience. I believe this even with growing up with a known learning disability since I was a kid, with being believed to have had ADHD when I was a teenager, and at 24 years old getting diagnosed with OCD/impulse control disorder. However, through everything, I always felt like I've gained a step in the direction of learning how a basic income with a livable amount of income to live on can always help achieve steps in the right direction of living life. Through my journalism for the Nova Scotia Advocate and before that in the media co-op, I have always had the opportunity to study the community of people living in poverty. By interviewing people, I have had the opportunity to learn things that have happened to them in their lifetime that have gotten them to living on income assistance at this present time in their lives. What we really need is a disability living allowance for persons with disabilities. I suggest basic income can serve as this type of allowance. While different jurisdictions have different programs, different types of allowances here available. Here in Nova Scotia, the only thing we have that even comes close to a disability income is the Employment Support and Income Assistance Program for Department of Community Services. In Ontario, they have the Disability Support Program. That one is different right there. I have learned that if a basic income already existed for these people, we would solve, safe number, 90% of the problems that these people are having. We would solve problems in a multitude of ways. First, it would solve a lot of the systematic problems income assistance in Nova Scotia are having with the Department of Community Services. Speaking in short description, I will say that the annual reviews, having to prove a large amount of your personal life to the caseworker conducting the annual review. This includes the caseworker wanting to know things about you that is none of their business in order to qualify you for receiving income assistance. Or if you are already a client for continuing to receive income assistance. If we had a basic guaranteed income, there would be no annual reviews. However, when you think about the whole experience of living life down and out and living on next to nothing here in Nova Scotia, the first thing that comes to mind is improvement to the Department of Community Services Employment Support and Income Assistance Program. This current program provides an enhanced standard household rate of $950 for people who have no choice but to depend on the services and assistance available through this program in order to receive an income to at least to try to afford living expenses. This question to ask yourself is, would there be a need for this program if basic income existed? Just imagine if $2,000 a month, a $1,050 jump from the current enhanced rate of $950 that people receive on income assistance have to live on was the rate that people could receive regularly. I should mention that this $950 enhanced standard household rate is not the amount that every single Nova Scotian who is on income assistance is receiving. Those Nova Scotians who are receiving the enhanced standard household rate are ones who are 55 years old plus, age 16 to 18 years, and persons with disabilities. Many of them are receiving a lot less than that. Some single people are only receiving as little as $686 a month. Homeless people are only receiving $380 a month for essentials. Then there are other rates available depending on whether you have kids or not. $1,013, $1,342, and $1,393 are just three examples of what those rates could be. What you qualify for depends on your circumstances. What is sad is there could be people out there who are receiving $686 a month or $608 a month who could qualify for the enhanced $950 a month, and they do not know they qualify for that amount. How you get treated on income assistance depends a lot on who the caseworker that is assigned to your case. Sometimes caseworkers fail to tell their clients what type of allowances are actually available to the client. If we had a basic income, things like proving your circumstances to a caseworker would not be relevant. Just think about how much that would improve life for people. By replacing the Employment Support and Income Assistance Program with a guaranteed income would mean that people would live life with no bureaucratic nonsense and systematic problems in qualifying for special needs allowances available through the Department of Community Services. Further to list, $2,000 a month being the amount to live on would also mean that current income assistance recipients could live life feeling less socially isolated. One better type of freedom you could have with a basic income is income assistance recipients could have a better level of support in their personal lives if Section 6.1.8 of the Community Services Policy Manual did not exist. This section of the policy manual defines cohabitation, persons who reside together with shared financial resources but not limited to credit cards, bank accounts, and loans, who represent themselves to others as being each other's spouse, will be considered as a two-adult family unit in determining initial eligibility or ongoing eligibility. Cohabitation is determined to exist in those situations even though there may not be a legal marriage or conjugal relationship. Overall, what I'm trying to say here is if you have someone in your life who you have romantic type interest in, that is your business. At present, under this current system of receiving income assistance through Department of Community Services, you are required to disclose the relationship to your caseworker. Then, as mentioned above, by Section 6.1.8 of the ESIA Policy Manual, this is one of the many problems with community services that affects the amount of income you will receive from income assistance. Furthermore, Section 6.1.8 of the ESIA policy also creates opportunities for the caseworker who is assigned to your case to put their nose into your business. A system of basic income can solve this problem. We need a system of receiving income where if you want to be in a relationship, that's none of a caseworker's business. However, additional information your income assistance caseworker is required to get in order to qualify you for income assistance, which is also none of their business, is not limited to what I had already explained. Other things your caseworker is required to get to know about you, which is none of their business, is qualifying for the $40 telephone allowance is treated as a special need, and you have to have a note from a doctor to qualify you for that allowance. All income assistance recipients should be able to have a phone regardless of circumstances. For the special diet allowances, even if you have the required medical documentation from your doctor, your caseworker has the authority to call your doctor and further question the doctor about your medical condition if they decide to not accept medical documentation at face value. The system of income assistance tends to put limitation on how much money you are allowed to have saved in a bank account or other assets you have as part of the process of qualifying for income assistance. And what I just mentioned above are just a few examples of how our system of receiving income assistance seeks to know things about you that is none of their business to qualify you for assistance. Also in Nova Scotia, your caseworker will tell you it's the law that you have to attend your annual reviews when contacted to meet with your caseworker for your annual review if you want to receive income assistance to continue following an annual review. If we had basic income, what I just mentioned is something that would not be relevant. Also, the stresses of not being able to make ends meet causes a lot of anxiety and depression. One thing that I have learned through my involvement with the mental health system over the years is that there is differences between situational depression and clinical depression. Income assistance recipients do not have enough money to live on. This is a major cause of situational depression. Basic income should not be a disincentive to work. Research shows that in different places around the world where basic income already exists or was piloted, people who are receiving a basic income are still going to work. When CERB existed, people were allowed to keep up to the first $1,000 before anything got clawed back from CERB. From employment insurance, 50% of every earned dollar gets clawed back. One income assistance recipient in Nova Scotia, on income assistance in Nova Scotia, what gets clawed back depends on whether you qualify for a supported employment or not. If you qualify for supported employment, you get to keep the first $350. In regular employment, you get to keep the first $150 before anything gets clawed back. Each province is different in this regard for income assistance. I believe, like with CERB, keeping the first $1,000 and only 50% of every additional dollar would be the best work incentive to seeking paid work. While on the subject of having more money to live on and what it needs, I want to reflect on something that MLA Gary Burrell once told me when I interviewed him for a story. One thing that Gary Burrell talked about during my conversation with him is how when he was a United Church minister, he learned over the years that people who live financially better off lives often gets better and quicker help from the mental health system. No one, regardless of where money to pay bills and to pay rent and bills comes from and the amount of income you receive, wants to be in a situation where they feel unsafe. One of the major issues facing income assistance here in Nova Scotia these days is that many of them are living in unsafe housing. There is no excuse for this, and with the basic income, $2,000 minimum, they can afford to live somewhere safer. Sometimes people on income assistance are forced to interact with people who are believers in the stigma about them. I have written about general stigma in the Nova Scotia Advocate. When you look at the community of people on income assistance, many have a disability of some sort. The different types of stigma they face exist around disability. It seems to income assistance recipients that many in financially better off society do not understand the difference between visible and invisible disabilities. Society automatically assumes that every person has a disability, is in some sort of needs care. Don't get me wrong, some, if not many persons with disabilities do need care. However, others with disabilities can take care of themselves. Stigma exists around telling IA recipients that they are lazy and they should just go get a job. Many in society believe in telling IA recipients to get a job. When they do, they neither understand nor care about the fact that by telling an IA recipient to get a job, all they are doing is worsening the anxieties and situational depression the income assistance recipient is already going through in life. All work should be valued, both volunteer and paid work. Some, if not many, income assistance recipients do volunteer work for nonprofit organizations. Examples of where they volunteer include food banks, soup kitchens, and the Salvation Army. With a basic income, you can have more leeway to do volunteer work. Anyway, as a conclusion to today's speech, we are hearing lots about why we need a basic income. It's needed for everyone, especially persons with disabilities, to have a better life. Yeah. I think that didn't take quite the 20 minutes I had, I don't think.
Yeah, that was perfect timing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
oh, great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, Kendall. That was a great talk and gave us a good sense of the experience of living in poverty and on income assistance and what a basic income might do.
Should I put my mask back on?
No, you can continue to keep it off until you finish with the questions. Okay. Are there any questions? And is there somebody who could do the running for that? Questions?
Thank you, Kendall. I think that was just a great speech. My question for you, I don't know how you're going to answer this. We do periodically run across people in organizations who are claiming to work for people who live in poverty, people who live on social assistance. And they keep seeing downsides to a basic income. They keep seeing fears. They're afraid that it's going to do some things that they don't want. And sometimes they say we don't listen enough to people who actually live in poverty. And obviously that's not true at this conference. But why do you think that is? Why do you think some anti-poverty advocates are so afraid of this idea?
Well, there is a multitude of explaining that I can do from my experience of studying the community of people living in poverty and some own experiences I had that I could say to answer your question. But in the interest of time, I got to be careful as to how much explaining I do. So in short description, I will answer your question by saying these people you describe who work for people on income assistance, that could mean a volunteer at a food bank who has another paid employment job, or it could mean someone like, for example, the social worker at the North End Community Health Center on Guidichin Street. She has a lot of clientele that live in poverty, or could also mean, per se, Fiona Traynor from Dow Legal Aid, who works as a community worker and helps people living in poverty deal with legal issues that they're having with the system. Also, Dow Legal Aid helps with tenancy issues that these people are having as well. That's pretty much what I can say in short out of the longer version of what I could say to answer your question. But speaking in general terms, when it does come to people with larger incomes that do work for people living in poverty, you could be speaking of, like, even Jen Brady, who's a dietitian that was up here before me, or the doctor of an income assistance recipient. You could be speaking for any of those people. So it depends on what type of position they work in and the level of that person's understanding and what type of professional they are.
Thank you, Kendall. Was there another question?
There is a lot I could. There is a lot that I could.
I just want to say thank you so much for sort of describing the quagmire of questions and hoops to jump through to be able to prove yourself to access income assistance. And just thinking back to the model that we talked about at the beginning of today, in terms of a graduated income assistance according to income level. How does a scenario like that, and I mean, feel free to jump in, Mandy, or folks who have been developing the policy, but how do we avoid asking those levels of questions, infringing on people's privacy and dignity, and also being nimble when people's income status changes in implementing basic income?
Well, it's because of everything that you just mentioned and the question that you just asked is why we have a lot of income assistance recipients in the community who are scared to come forward about their situations. And when they go to their annual reviews once a year, they will not go alone by themselves. We have some people in this community, like the social worker or a social work student who's working under the supervision of the social worker, could be at the North End Community Health Center. Fiona Traynor, who's the community legal worker at Dow Legal Aid, or in some cases, say if the income assistance recipients has a church that they're affiliated with, their church pastor will go with them, but it's different type of professionals, and they will go with the income assistance recipient to their annual reviews in front of the caseworker, so that the professional advocate is there to make sure that the conversation goes smoothly between the income assistance recipient and the caseworker, and that is one way that the recipient can be protected from getting asked questions that is none of the caseworker's business during an annual review. But with that being said, there might be one or two of those questions that a caseworker is asking that the caseworker will tell you that they are required by law to be asking those questions to the recipient, and that kind of causes a bit of, and the best way I can describe it is a verbal altercation between the client and the caseworker, and the professional advocate under this current system has to step in to calm that down when it happens.
Yeah, and so I think what you're describing, Kendall, very well is the intrusiveness of the current system and the impact of being asked questions that look into your personal life and then just make decisions around whether or not what you are experiencing meets whatever standard for getting the income you need.
Exactly. That sums it up right well, Amanda, yes.
And I think your question speaks to, if we had a basic income, how do you make that system nimble? And I think CERB gave us, my response would be that CERB gave us a model for that, a very simple, non-intrusive way of applying for income assistance when you want it.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, at the time when you need it. And there may be modifications that need to be made if you're providing this this income assistance or basic income assistance through the taxation system. There may be a need for modifications in terms of if your circumstances change, what's the mechanism for identifying that change and then seeking further assistance or reducing assistance. Yeah, so that would be my response. I think that probably Sheila might have something to say. I know Paul has a comment. Did you want to add anything, Paul?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such a great presentation, Kendall. I really appreciate the opportunity to listen and learn about things in the Nova Scotia context. I guess one thing I would throw out there is maybe for all of us, not to get, my suggestion is, $2,000 around the CERB to me seemed arbitrary. I don't know who was doing the math on this, and I think it was a lost opportunity to really look at the impact of that $2,000. But maybe just one other thing I'll throw out there that I don't know if it's come up yet, but I think one of the things that gets in the way of advancing a basic income is our distrust of poor people as a society. And we have to overcome that. How many people have walked by someone who's asking for money on the street and said, well, I don't want to give them money because I don't know they're going to spend it on cigarettes and booze. Well, how many of you spend your money on cigarettes and booze? And without judgment. So I think we don't ask questions as a society about like the billions of dollars in oils and gas subsidies or all kinds of things that are our dollars. But when it comes to making sure that people have food to eat and access to the things that they need, I feel like there's so much public conversation, convincing that needs to happen. And I think it comes back to a distrust of the poor. And I think that's one of the things we've got to collectively challenge.
I will answer that by saying that I had a conversation just this past Thursday about relating to that very thing that you just brought up with a friend of mine who I was meeting for brunch that morning, and something she brought up is an organization that she used to be part of. There used to be some talk in workshops that she used to conduct around social assistance and income assistance, and some of the people in those workshops that she used to facilitate in the past have actually brought up, according to those people, 50% of Nova Scotians who are receiving income assistance should not even be on it. And to me, I call that fake news, because people out there who have that opinion, they don't know why the person is on income assistance. That person, people who are making comments like that, they don't know what happened to that person in their lifetime that got them there. And that person, even though they might not have a physical disability, you can see they might have invisible disabilities. They don't take stuff like that into consideration. People who believe something like 50% of income assistance recipients who are receiving assistance should not be receiving it. Someone, yeah.
Thank you. That's a great response, Kendall.
Yeah.